Hello and welcome to this episode of BeatTeacher Burnout. I'm so excited today because I'm joined by Caroline, who is living in Ireland, and she has a very different take. As a teacher, she's come from industry, but she is looking at safety and empathy and support and understanding and a whole different take on how we can be the best version of ourselves rather than burning out. So welcome, Caroline. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, Rowena. Delighted to be here.
Great. So do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about you before we get going?
Yeah, just lovely to be here and to be able to share, my little bit of story with you all. Rowena and I were just speaking there before we came on about what was my shift from industry into teaching and the love of teaching. And that's my story, working in branding for 30 years across so many different, actually in the UK, started off in Scotland, massive big blue chip companies like Orange PLC and looking at, Reebok and things like that. And then come back to Ireland and started working at a top agency there. Then I started my own company, Venice Design, and really busy working on big government work, lots of work in the healthcare system and also working in sustainability and well-being. And I was actually just asked off chance, actually in a women's networking session, to come in and do a little bit of teaching in Griffith College. And when I went in, I started teaching with the students. I just absolutely loved it. I just had that light bulb moment went off and I just went, wow, this is like, I had understanding of the word vocation. We grew up, people would talk about vocations, people choosing a vocation, and I never really understood what that meant. And just when I started teaching to students, I had so much meaning and I got so much from it that I started on that journey then of moving from industry into education. And I was asked to write a lot academically for course design. And then I went into a master's, and at the moment studying a master's in training, education, development. And I teach around 100 students, international students. My college that I work in is Griffith College in Dublin, and all over the globe come specially to learn design with us. And it's just such an honour. And I suppose I've really got interested then in the art of teaching and creating those safe spaces for the students to bud, blossom and flourish into their creativity and their brilliance, and creating those beautiful environments for that to happen. And then moved into family leadership to help support the teachers, because I realised that the teachers are the ones who create that beautiful environment. They have the power to create a gorgeous, warm, like I call a greenhouse effect for the students just to flourish. So, but the teachers having so much empathy and love for the students need to support themselves in that, in making themselves feel safe so that they can create those safe spaces. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a journey you've had. Twice you've used that word safe, and you've used it about ensuring that the students feel safe in order to be able to flourish. But you've also mentioned that the staff, the leaders, the teachers feeling safe in order to be able to do their best. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it has really mirrored my own journey from self-discovery, I suppose. And I wouldn't have been conscious of the fact that I was very much a pleaser for a lot of my life, and realizing that I was doing for others and forgetting about my own needs. And it was amazing in a lot of ways that I did achieve an awful lot, but it was from a space of maybe not that personal safety, where maybe I felt I started to question, why was I actually feeling that I had to please? Was there a fear there of not pleasing? And if I wasn't pleasing, what would actually happen, And I just started to get really conscious of that. What kind of energy was I giving out? Was I giving an energy of anxiety? If that's how my operating system was running, we'll say. And I just started very conscious of that, and starting to go back into centering myself and working on that innate security within myself, and feeling very at home in myself, my own body, and feeling like that self-worth and my own value, that actually became more intrinsic then, that when I do share, I share from my heart. I share from a space that I call the middle way. You're not trying to impress anyone, or you're not trying to overgive. So there would have been, I suppose, when in the corporate world, I would have been more kind of, you have to put a bravado on. I worked with a lot of men, and it was kind of had to maybe put on this false identity of, the overachiever as such. And then the other side is you start going into teaching, you're giving too much, giving. So it's finding that middle way way where you're at home in yourself and you're giving from your core, which is what you came here to do as such. And I feel it's where we start to really flourish. That's the difference. And I love the way you have flourish. Mine's flourish by design, and you have teach, flourish, and thrive in your book. So it's a real connection with that. And that means like you're flourishing from within yourself. You're full in yourself, and then you're giving from that space like a sprinkler. You're kind of watering the garden from within yourself, that you have that psychological safety, and you know that you're doing it from a heart-centered space rather than fearful space. Yeah, that's the difference.
That is, I think you've really hit the nail on the head for a lot of school staff, because certainly for me, after I burnt out, I realized that I had never felt enough. I never felt good enough. And when I speak to school staff, they say it doesn't matter whether they're the ECT just coming into teaching or the CEO at the top, they're saying to me, they feel they can't, often, not all of them obviously, but they can't do enough. They can't be enough. They don't feel they're good enough. They feel that imposter syndrome. And how do you get to a place where you feel psychologically safe? Because as teachers, we're always trying to impress. We're trying to do our best. We're trying to get the outstanding judgment. We're trying to get all the books marked. We're worried that we're not doing enough. And how do you get to that place where you can rest in your own self?
Well, I definitely think practices. I was sharing to you before we came on there that every morning I get up at 6:30 and I have a half an hour of yoga that I do. I use a YouTube video, and I do, usually it's a 30-day challenge, and I keep doing the 30-day challenge because I'll keep going. I know if I'm on a program as such, just the way I work, because I'm a design thinker and it's all process. So that is huge, I must say, because when I do my yoga in the morning and I kind of start by filling myself up, and I'm feeling I'm honoring how I'm feeling. So I'd love to share is really about that. It's not about feeling positive all the time. It's about actually being real about how you're actually feeling on that given day. If you're exhausted, you're being honest about the fact you're exhausted. You're not trying to cover up or pretend. You're actually feeling it. Or if you have an emotional, something happens, or you have something with the students or in your personal life, that you're honoring your feelings first. You're giving yourself space for those feelings to be honored and to be felt and to be integrated into your experience. And then you're moving then from that space, giving yourself time to just digest your life experience and digest maybe past experiences that have come up because maybe you've had a trigger in the work or in life, giving yourself that space to be honest about how you feel, so giving your space in that. In the morning I would do that, and the yoga is beautiful because it gives you that sacred space there the first thing in the morning. Then I go for my shower, and then I have a ritual, I suppose, in the morning that supports me. And then when I come, I always arrive into college on early, and don't leave it too tight on time, so sit and have a cup of tea, and I just kind of go into a stillness for a little bit before I go into class. So I take a responsibility around just making sure that I'm feeling still and calm, and I'm feeling in a good space. And I sharing and talking to other lecturers about if there was issues, or making sure that you're getting those, I suppose, anything that might be causing anxiety or worry, or you're not letting that fester. You're sharing how you feel honestly and openly. And one thing that really helps, and actually, one thing that is actually so key, and I noticed that really connects with the students and it makes them psychologically safe, is being vulnerable with the students and actually telling them, how you're feeling about something, or that something that you're not perfect, that they have. And in that research that I've been doing, they say that has been documented as it builds safety. They feel safe when you feel you're authentic and you're real, and that they connect with you on a personal level. And it's interesting because of all the tricks and tips that teachers learn about what to teach, the how to teach is really key, I noticed, because a lot of my students come back to me afterwards and they would say, Caroline, I remember this point you made in class, and I'm thinking it's going to be something academic, and I say, no, do you remember you told me the story about your daughter or something like this, or I remember the time you told me about when you were an intern and X, Y, and Z happened. The challenges and the difficulties that I've had in my own personal life often share as stories with the students, and they really can connect with that and empathize that sometimes I went through a struggle and this is how I overcame it, and that even if I'm struggling at the moment with something, I would share with them. That really builds a connection and a trust. So you're building trust, and that creates that psychological safety as well, and sharing how you support yourself, and a lot of work around mindset I would share with the students as well. So it's being real with them, and being real with yourself is really important, because I think a lot of us grow up feeling we have to be perfect and we have to put on, and we have to this overachiever, and like you talked about there, always doing less basically basically it is, I say slow down to speed up, because what's funny is like sometimes we feel like we have to tick all the boxes and get everything right. But in doing that, sometimes we lose that human connection with the students, So it's sometimes when we slow down and we're just like, sit down with them and, just be real. This is, how are you feeling? And this difficult, this challenge that they're facing, and they talk openly about it, and then we find a way through it. And in that piece, they actually, in that interaction, they find more energy, because they've got the space to be able to share, and then they're able to get through that blockage or whatever. So it's very much how you teach, not what you teach. And the psychological safety is giving yourself that space to really tap into how you're feeling, be real with yourself, and then accepting that, and then moving on from that, and that you have that intrinsic value. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. It's just try to move into the space of back to enjoying. This is what you love to do, and we try to remember that.
Yeah, I think that remembering is so important, isn't it? I talk a lot about noticing the impact that we have. Is it a child who just smiles because they've got it? Or is it someone who comes in and said, guess what? Miss, last night this happened at home. It was amazing. It doesn't need to be a huge, big win. It can be the small things, but we need to watch for them and then remember them so that we see our impact, because that sort of fills a tank in us of what we need. I mean, you're obviously very creative and design focused and everything. And a lot of teachers say to me, one of their biggest issues as they're sort of struggling with burnout and the overwhelm is, they came into the job because they're creative and they love that side of themselves and sharing that with the students. In the overwhelm and the exhaustion, the creative gets squeezed out, like, in the lesson plans, they have to follow it black and white, they feel, and they're too tired to sort of present that beautiful side of themselves. What would you be saying to them?
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Same in academia, because we have, third level, because we have our learning outcomes for each module, and we have 6-week blocks. We do a 6 week, and then we have a 1 week off, and another 6 weeks, and we have a month off, then we have 2 other 6 weeks. So it's really like they're like marathons, you're running them, and it's very intense, and they have a lot of assessments. I like that you can sometimes, when you're tired yourself, just focus on that. But what I try to do is like, okay, I have my lesson plan and I read that, but let's see what's happening in the classroom, and that emotional intelligence really comes into play, and reading the room and having that connection built with the students where you kind of know them individually and sometimes what's going on in their lives or personal life. And there's a little bit of flexibility to that, and flexibility to yourself. So I would try to be creative in the moment, and what do we need? So I have some slides maybe I need to share with them. But if I see them tired when I come in first, and I think, well, if I start talking for 20 minutes in a lecture here, that's just not going to have any impact, because they're going to hear me. They'll be in their head doing their shopping, or they're going to be worrying about that assessment or whatever. So what I do then is I say, let's put the teaching the 15 minutes at the end of the class, and let's get them talking, and I'll get them to do some research. So I'll mix it up, and I'll say, again, like yesterday, for example, we had a piece that I had to give. Actually, the 15-minute lecture, I decided that they would do it, not me. So I get them to research. So because I knew their energies were low because we had assessment and it was a long day. So I thought they really need a little interaction. So I guess instead of me teaching them for 15 minutes about a certain typographer, I guess I'd give them 15 minutes, and in groups 2 and 3, use your phones, use your laptops, and research for me about this specific typographer who designed Helvetica. And just give me 5 points at the end of 15 minutes, and each one of you share. And that they just got so energized because we were chatting together, they were enjoying it, they were learning as they were doing it. And then I went back to them and they just gave me 5 points, and the whole class then were engaged in exercise. So again, just have the flexibility to read the room, have the emotional intelligence, and see what they're ready for and what they're not. And sometimes if it was first thing in the morning, it'd be perfect to sit and do the 15-minute and maybe ask questions, get them to ask questions or interact that way. But I suppose having your teaching tools and knowing when to use them and when not. So I always would say the emotional intelligence is really important there, and watching the energy levels. And do we need to increase the energy in the room, or do we need to bring it down? Sometimes it could be talking too much, and then get them to calm down, so it's a little bit like that. So that creativity is really important engagement in being aware of what's happening in the room. And because I think one thing is, okay, yes, we have our lists of things that we need to do, but the main thing is we need engagement and retention. Retention only happens when we actually are doing. We have this doing bit. So I was always focused, from the master's, understanding around the psychology of learning, and that basically what we're trying to get is retain into the long-term memory, and we do that more effectively when we're in active learning and active. So again, it's being more innovative in the classroom around how can that happen. And yes, I have my lesson plans, but how can I make it more fun? Basic, yeah. That would be my focus, because I always feel my philosophy is if students are having fun, they're going to enjoy it, and if they're enjoying it, they're going to learn it, and then they're going to retain it. Yeah,
I love that. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I don't know how many episodes of this podcast I've done so far, but I don't think we've ever talked in the process of beating teacher burnout or preventing it. We've never talked actually about the students, because there's such a strong link, isn't there, between how the students are and how you are. And the students, kids are clever, whether they're 4 or whether they're 19. They're really intuitive, aren't they? And they're going to pick up how you are. So we are very much needing to talk about what they need, because then they can feed us in a more healthy way, and we can then feed them in a more healthy way. So it's very joined up, isn't it? And that whole empathy piece that you talk about is crucial.
Absolutely. And it's funny that when we talk about burnout there, just it's springing to mind there. Sometimes when I'm really tired, especially doing the masters, because I actually teach nights as well. So I teach during the day, and then I have evening students. I teach from 6:30 to 9:30, so nearly 10 o'clock at night when I finish teaching. And then I teach on Saturdays to mature students too. So I teach, and I have to go back in the next day, and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, And it's funny because it's that joy and that love and that passion that you have for your subject is what actually really exudes from you as well. So when you're passionate about your project, and you really can tap into why you're teaching this subject, to get passionate about it again. And I think for the fem leadership side of things, that like passionate about life, passionate about what you're actually doing. Are you teaching what you love? And if you don't love what you teach anymore, can we reconnect with that? Can we reconnect? We can fire up why we're teaching this and get excited about the subject, because that's what really comes across. And in all the studies and all the feedback that I've gotten, it's been like, the sense of that, just that I'm passionate about what I'm teaching, And when you're passionate about it, there's that flow of vibrancy that comes with your innate, your life force starts to flow from you. And it's not something that you're forcing, like I have to teach this and I have to kind of nearly force it into the students from a kind of mind, this is something I need to do, and it's responsibility based, and it's kind of, it's coming down from the Board of Education or something like that. No, like I have a love in my heart for this subject, and I want to teach it to the students because I want them as passionate about as I have, and then maybe they might carry through their lives the same passion that I have for design since I was 17 years of age, that I still have a passion for, and I will see how we can design like whole society now interested in social design, and how we can, the more we confidence get and the more higher we go in position, that we can have that huge influence. The more, so it's just about how can we ignite the passion in the students through our own passion, and it's not like education isn't about getting 90%, 100% A's. It's about finding something that you really love and following that throughout your whole life, and that you're always going to be a lifelong learner. And especially nowadays, it's more crucial that we're constantly learning. And if you teach the students to fall in love with learning, then society will flourish, because we will always be excited about the new rather than being scared of it, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I feel that's such a good place to finish and rest, because we need to come back to that why we do it. Why are we teaching? Because it's a hard job, but it's so radically exciting because of the passion that we can share, and that love of learning and that discovery. And I often talk about one of my favorite times being where I had some parents came into my school to try and help the parents to understand how to read with their children, because some of the parents couldn't read either. And so it was the most beautiful thing. And we did some maths, and we did some reading. And there a couple of the children, so all the children had additional needs. And at one point, 2 of the children were trying to troubleshoot this maths thing, and the parents were watching, and suddenly the children go, and the parents' faces, and the children's faces. And that's why we do it. Those were young children at that point, but, we do it because of that love of discovery, of learning, of new things, I love that. So, Caroline, thank you so much. If people want to find out about you, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, well, on my Facebook page is Caroline Flourish by Design. Also, I have a website, www.flourishbydesign.co. And there's a little workbook on there if anybody wants to. I know, Rowena, we were in a workshop in Bali where I ran it. Yay! And it's about, for women, again, in leadership, working out, I suppose, to feel that sense of empowerment in themselves. Who am I? What do I stand for? And what am I here to do? So we're working through those characteristics and trying to redesign ourselves from the inside out so that we get a really strong sense of who we are, what we stand for, and then how we're showing up in the world with that passion, Yeah, so that's there. And all my details are through on the website or on Facebook. And I run weekly podcasts now. I started again, actually. So yeah, the podcast weekly called on Flourish by Design TV, and it talks about femme leadership and some educational bits and some personal discovery pieces. So if anyone's interested in looking that up, I'm on Facebook and on YouTube.
Okay, that's amazing. Well, thanks, Caroline, and thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.